representatives of the three major parties in Vermont. The purpose of today's statewide canvass is to certify the results and winners for federal and statewide officials from the Tuesday, November 5th general election. Before we dive into the canvass, I want to make some important recognitions. First and foremost, Vermont's town and city clerks have been working diligently for months to prepare for and to conduct this election. They are truly the backbone of good elections in Vermont, and they have been required to put in many extra hours and a lot of extra attention to details in order to ensure that this election went smoothly on top of their regular duties as clerks. And so we should all thank our town or city clerk. Second recognition, my elections team. This small team has been working nights and weekends to make certain that the clerks have what they need in order to conduct free, fair, and accessible elections. They have been overseeing ballot creation, engineering a universal vote by mail election, and frequent campaign finance filings over the past months. And this has kept this team moving at a sprint pace across a course that feels more like a marathon. So thank you to your team. I also want to thank our civic and voter engagement director. There's a whole team led by Robin Palmer. We were able to create Vermont's first universal voter guide for the 2024 general election, and this team has been out engaging voters, registering voters for many months over the summer, and I think that the heavy participation that we saw in this election has to have been aided by the work of our voter engagement team. Lastly, in the run-up to the 2024 election, we had great collaboration with Governor Scott and his team. And in particular, I want to thank the Agency of Digital Services and BGS for their collaboration and for helping us to ensure a smooth and safe election. So our mission as Secretary of State and our team is to provide a secure and accurate election. The canvassing process is a careful and deliberative process that is defined in statute, and what you will witness today is a result of that process. As I said back in August, we needed to turn our focus to ensure that the general election would be able to be certified efficiently, on time, and with confidence. And I'm happy to say, as of 10 a.m. on November 12th, we are pleased with the results of that focus. I'm relieved that this is the last statewide election that we will be administering under our old election management system. Moreover, I'm really proud that our elections team, our technology partner, and our town and city clerks put in the extra work that was necessary to iron out the wrinkles and make sure that the system worked on its last hurrah. Immediately after our election, our team, in conjunction with clerks, diligently checked the accuracy of the election night results. This is the reason the certification period is 7 days in statute. This is an important period of time where every vote is checked, double-checked to make sure that we have tabulated all the ballots and that the results are accurate. We will always prioritize accuracy over expediency, and so we thank you for your patience and the patience of Vermonters as we conducted this deliberate process, ensuring accurate results reflective of each and every ballot cast by Vermont voters. Today's canvass of federal and statewide results is an important part of the results certification process. As I said earlier, we're joined today by members of the three major parties. Together we will review and certify vote totals and winners in statewide and federal races. Vote totals before us are the summation of official return of votes submitted to our office by our town and city clerks. I am as pleased with the technical administration of this election as I could possibly be, but I'm even prouder of the participation levels. And this is what participatory democracy should look like. In Vermont, This year, Vermonters came out in record numbers. We had 522,600 Vermonters registered to vote as of Election Day this year. 372,885 Vermonters voted, topping the total participation in 2020 for a new total participation record. This represents more than 71% of registered voters in Vermont. This proportion is second only to our 2020 percentage turnout. Nearly 64% of those who voted early, using a ballot that was mailed to them by the Universal Vote by Mail system. So this was more than 237,000 voters. It was slightly lower than the proportion in 2020, which is understandable since we were in the middle of a global pandemic at that time. After our review, we'll sign off on the certification of the results and the winners as official. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Elections Director Sean Sheehan.
Before I begin the process, I wanted to say a few words about the election. In short, the way Vermont's 2024 general election was conducted makes me proud to be a Vermonter. I think it starts at the top. I want to thank Secretary Copeland-Hansis, Deputy Secretary Hibbert, Chief of Staff Mills, how do you have the cameras there? But your team absolutely provided leadership, foresight, support, and liaisons to local, state, and federal partners. I want to thank my staff in the Elections Division for their tireless work and steady hand this year. They pulled off a successful presidential primary back in March, down a couple staff members, including a director. They brought on new staff and inspired candidates, brought them up to speed over the spring, new staff including me. And then they worked with municipal clerks and other partners to run the statewide primary in August and the general election last week. As the Secretary mentioned, they did all of this on old systems while simultaneously working to build new systems, which we're very excited to launch next year. I want to thank the Secretary's civic and communication staff, as well as all the voter registration efforts, volunteers who conducted outreach, all the media outlets for your voter education. Record high registration, record high voter turnout. Those things don't just happen on their own. Those records are a testament to all of the work, producing voter guides, holding voter registration drives, and reminding every Vermonter that their voice matters. I want to thank the town and city clerks across Vermont, all the boards of civil authority and election workers. Their teamwork and dedication is admirable. Their commitment to a fair, accessible, and accurate election is something we should all be thankful for. Elections are just one of many duties clerks serve in our towns, and oftentimes they're part-time, paid for just a handful of hours per week. And this year, they didn't just have to hone their expertise on election procedures, they also had to take crash courses in cybersecurity and physical security to prepare for this year's election and threats that we haven't faced in the past. On that note, as the Secretary said, I want to thank the administration for their collaboration to ensure Election Day would not be derailed. From the Agency of Digital Services to BGS, to Vermont Energy Management, Vermont State Police, to Governor Scott, who joined Secretary Copeland-Hansis the week before the election for press availability. Many of you were there, both urging Vermonters to partake in our participatory democracy and to do so in a peaceful and respectful manner. I want to thank the public. I think Vermont voters really heeded that call. After hearing a smatter of vitriolic anecdotes in the weeks leading up to the election from clerks, from election workers, Election Day itself went largely smoothly and respectfully. We heard that voters who forgot to BYOB, bring their own ballot, understood they had to sign an affidavit to get another ballot, and willingly did so. We heard that voters were appreciative of their neighbors who volunteer their time to protect our democratic traditions. And in fact, down in Weston, we heard from the clerk that there was one voter who brought in a bouquet of roses to give to election workers as their thanks. That really warmed our hearts to hear that. And finally, I want to thank election observers, both domestic and international, We hear that domestic observers largely conducted their observations respectfully. They didn't interfere with the privacy of voters, and they didn't interfere with the work of election officials. On the international side, I think most of the folks in this room, with the parties, with the press, others met or heard from Robert and Marie. It's the first press conference we've had in a while. They haven't been here. They were our two observers from the Organization of Security and Cooperation of Europe. And they were just two of the 164-person mission representing 25 European states that fanned out across our nation for several weeks. Their preliminary report, released last Wednesday, sounded several alarms regarding the state of democracy in the United States, from disinformation to the role of PACs, but it also hailed the actual administration of elections, of this election, saying, quote, "The 5th of November general elections demonstrated the resilience of the country's democratic institutions with a well-run process in a highly polarized environment, candidates campaigning freely across the country, and voters engaging actively." So yes, we have room for improvement, and we also have a strong foundation on which to build. And that foundation is thanks to our clerks, our other civil servants, our press corps, and every Vermonter who reaches out to their neighbors, their friends, their family, to encourage them to engage in our participatory democracy. So I'll now go over today's process. Questions are welcome from the committee. I do ask that the press and public hold on questions until we're done with the certification process. So as we canvass the votes here for national and statewide, the rest of the races are being canvassed across the state. House reps, there's a rep clerk and one other election official who are processing the canvass. For Senate, there's a senatorial clerk and chairs of county parties invited to those county canvasses, along with the county role, the high bailiff role this year. The election night reporting and the official return of votes were sent to us and to other canvassing committees. Those votes were then tallied directly from town's official return of votes, and write-ins recorded and results presented to the committee, as we are going to do. The candidate with the most votes has a check mark next to their name. In most instances, the check mark signifies the winner of the race. The one exception to that this year is the lieutenant governor race, because no candidate received 50% of the vote. The legislature will hold a vote when they convene in January. What we're tasked to do, per 17 VSA 2592A, is for all state and national offices and statewide public questions, the Secretary of State and the chair of the state committee of each major political party or their designee shall constitute a canvassing committee to receive and tally returns and issue certificates. For the U.S. Senator, Representative to Congress, and statewide offices, per 2592H1, the canvassing committee shall declare the person receiving the largest number of votes for each office to be elected, and it shall issue a certificate of election signed by a majority of the canvassing committee. The committee shall send or deliver the certificate to the candidate elected. However, there's no certificate for the statewide office, as those are canvassed by the Joint Assembly in January. Per 2592K, in the case of the offices of Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Treasurer, Secretary of State, Attorney General, and Auditor of Accounts, the canvassing committee shall prepare a certificate of election, but shall not sign it. The prepared certificate shall be presented to the official canvassing committee appointed by the General Assembly pursuant to Chapter 2, Section 47 of the Vermont Constitution for their use if they desire. So for the U.S. Senator and Representative to Congress, we will sign the report and sign the certificate of election for the winning candidate. For the statewide offices, we will sign the report, and I also have here the unsigned certificates, which we will deliver to the Joint Canvassing Committee to use, again, if they desire. I have 3 sets of documents here as well, the statewide canvass, summary pages for each of you. I have some here for the press you can distribute after as well. We also have the turnout report, which is broken down by county and statewide. We have canvass reports and certificates of election for each race. As I mentioned, for the presidential electors representing Congress to sign certificates, the rest to review. With that, I will proceed to read the vote totals for each candidate and each race before asking the committee to review and sign the reports and certificates. For the report, the official report for the canvass committee for U.S. President and Vice President, Kamala D. Harris and Tim Walz, Democratic Party, received 235,791 votes. Donald J. Trump and J.D. Vance, Republican Party, 119,395 votes. With the We the People Party, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Nicole Shanahan, 5,905 votes. The Libertarian Party, Chase Oliver and Mike Kermott, 1,828 votes. With the Socialism and Liberation Party, Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia, 1,710 votes. The Peace and Justice Party, Cornel West and Melina Abdullah, 1,549 votes. The Socialist Worker Party, Rochelle Fruit and Dennis Richter, 211 votes. Here are the two documents to sign. For U.S. Senator, Independent, Bernie Sanders, 229,429 votes. For the Republican Party, Gerald Malloy, 116,512 votes. Independent, Steve Berry, 7,941 votes. Libertarian, Matt Hill, 4,530. Peace and Justice Party, Justin Scoville, 3,339. Epic Party, Mark Stewart Greenstein, 1,104 votes, with the winner being Bernie Sanders. For Representative to Congress, Democratic Party, Becca Balint, 218,398. Republican Libertarian, Mark Koster, 104,451. Independent Adam Ortiz, 19,286. Peace and Justice Party, Jill Jesse Diamondstone, 7,552. The winner being Becca Balint. The report for governor, Republican Phil Scott, 266,439. Democrat and Progressive Esther Charleston, 79,217. Independent Kevin Hoyt, 9,368. Peace and Justice June Goodband, 4,512. Independent Eli Koa Mutino, 2,414. The winner, Phil Scott. And this one, we only signed the top sheet. For Lieutenant Governor, Republican, John S. Rogers, 171,853. Progressive and Democrat, David Zuckerman, 165,868. Peace and Justice, Ian Diamondstone, 13,671. And with this, you'll see there's the check mark signifying that John Rogers received the most votes. And as we noted, there will be the election of the joint committee. And that's also noted on this. And we just signed the top one for that. For state treasurer, Democrat Mike Pichak, 211,134. Republican Josh Beckhofer, 130. Here, we'll sign the top sheet. For Secretary of State, Sarah Copeland Hanses, Democrat, 205,378. Republican H. Brooke Page, 138,673. The winner, Secretary Copeland Hanses. For Auditor of Accounts, Democrat and Progressive Doug Hoffer, 207,195. Republican H. Brooke Page, 134,066. The winner, Doug Hoffer, who's on the top sheet. And finally, for Attorney General, Democrat Charity R. Clark, 200,711. Republican Kerr Nelson, 128,798. And Peace and Justice, Kevin Gustafson, 17,159. With the winner, Charity Clark. Again, we will sign the top sheet. That concludes our process here. I'll note again, we have the turnout report and the results. I'm happy to share with the press and public that's here. We have one copy of the full canvassing committee report, the breakout by towns. As you can see, it's very thick. That will be posted on our website later today, along with the canvassing results from around the state as they're sent in to us. With that, this concludes the canvassing committee.
So I just want to take a few moments to thank you all. Thank you for participating in this certification today, but more importantly, thank you all for the work that you did over the previous many months to engage with voters, to connect candidates with voters, and to strengthen our democratic process by ensuring that every voter has the opportunity to understand which candidate they think would do the best job. In order to maintain a vibrant democracy, we all have to work hard to ensure that voters have the information they need to make the right choice of who to support on their ballot. And I'm really proud of the interest and enthusiasm that voters and candidates had during this election. The story of the 2024 election is record turnout, and in a democracy, that's the win. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, do you guys want to
Do you want
ask?
to take questions from the table, or do you guys want to stand and do it? What works best for you?
Do you want everyone for the questions?
I'm good at either one.
Sure. I mean, I
Yes.
don't see why not.
So Jim, why don't you sit back down?
Here, it's probably helpful for all kind of like fan out kind of things.
this is a public proceeding, and we would welcome you to come sit down with your students.
Thank you.
Representative, where are these students from?
Thank you so much, Secretary. These students are from Thetford Elementary School, and they're here to see the certification of the public.
Welcome, Thetford Panthers. I'm Sarah Copeland-Hansis. I live just up the road in Bradford, and I'm really happy you could be here with us today. We have just finished certifying the results of the 2024 election that happened a week ago, and now we're going to take some questions from members of the press about the official process that we just finished. So who's first with questions?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think we all heard incidents around the country. Unfortunately, we didn't have issues with our ballot drop boxes, and bomb threats, and things here in Vermont. But certainly, we had people, town clerks, election workers reported that people came in, screamed in some cases at them about voting by mail or other things they didn't like about the election, or some of the disinformation that had been spread around the country. The Secretary of State put out together with clerks a video on election security in Vermont, so that Vermonters can understand what happens to your ballot when you cast it, how there's protections against fraud and other efforts. We think those videos helped a lot, but still, I think with everything that people read, pass on online, a lot of the disinformation and misinformation that we're circulating, Vermont wasn't immune to the vitriol, and we did hear several cases in the weeks leading up to the election of clerks who would be working alone in their clerk's office or with the election worker, and people coming in and getting quite heated with them, things that are beyond their control. They're carrying out their civic duty in the town within the bounds of state law, and so that led us to take certainly precautions. A lot of the training as we referenced in the months leading up to the election with election workers on how to de-escalate animated situations so that clerks and election workers would feel equipped in that way. And as I mentioned, the governor coming over and joining Secretary Copeland-Hansis for that media advisory, helping get the word out to Vermonters to really be respectful on Election Day. Election Day itself, we didn't hear many incidents at all. We really heard overwhelmingly that people were respectful. So we're very thankful to Vermonters for that. There were some that were borderline. We were in close communication with both state police and the FBI, as others around the country were really looking for patterns. And we really heard from our law enforcement partners. They wanted to err on the side of hearing anything that could escalate. There weren't, I'd say, explicit threats, but there were certainly implicit threats and a lot of animated and anger, I think, targeted clerks. In a few instances, not as much as the rest of the country, and not on Election Day.
Would you say there were more instances than in previous years, or is it hard to?
That's my understanding. I think in Vermont, we typically, these are our neighbors, right? We know our town clerks, we know our election workers, the people that live next to us. We know that they're volunteering their time to make sure we have a fair and accessible process. And I think in past years, Vermont has often felt like we're immune to what goes on in the rest of the country. And I think we're seeing some that nowhere's immune to everything going on. So we can't prevent, but fortunately, I think more Vermonters came together to help still make this special place with a tight community fabric that we.
The legislature this year passed a bill prohibiting firearms in polling places. Are you aware of any instances that have to be enforced?
No.
I have a clarifying question, maybe it's for Sean as well, the results that were reported by the Associated Press versus what was on your website. I understand the Secretary of State's website reports blank votes, and that there's two categories of, votes, and also votes that were blank. Can you maybe shed some light as to why, like that discrepancy between the AP and between the website?
I can't speak to all of the AP's process, but I do know that they have reporters and stringers out in many towns, many polling locations, so they get the summary sheet or the results often from clerks and local election officials report on that. The process, as we have, is that the clerks, again, if they're a tabulator town, which are towns that have 1,000 homeowners or more, required to use a tabulator per state law. They have fewer than 1,000 residents. They can use they can hand count if they wish. So the towns that use tabulators, at the end of that, they get the tabulator tape with the results saying the total number of votes cast, the write-in votes, but not, they don't have, it's a manual process then to see who the write-ins are for. My understanding is the AP, if they're there, reporters, this public can see the tabulator tape and report on the information from it. The clerk and the election officials then enter that information from their summary into our election management system. Those results, as they're entered by clerks, are the unofficial results that are posted on election night. So that happens anywhere from 7:10, a few minutes after 7 o'clock when the polls close, up until I think it was about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning when the final of our 247 town and city clerks were entered. The results, again, the hand count towns take longer for that part of the process. Then over the following 2 days until 7 p.m. on Thursday, the clerks and boards of civil authority have that time to go through who the write-ins are for, and that's a process of first assessing, breaking down all who was written in, which one, then looking and having the Board of Civil Authority see if a name is slightly different, was the voter intent to be the same person, merging those names as appropriate. Sometimes people write in candidates even if their name is on the ballot. That might be a reason why a named candidate might get a few more votes than in the official return of votes than they did on election night if they were also written in addition to having people voted for them in other ballots. For the blank, as we have on here, that's if people didn't vote in that particular race, they would be blank in that category. If they voted for more than one, would be an overvote. So all those numbers go through the election officials check all that information and finalize it for the official return of votes, which come to this process here today. As far as everything that the AP does beyond that, I think that would be a question for them.
How would a potential revote in Bennington County, I believe, if they move forward with that, how would that change this? Number one, I guess, can you just maybe talk about why you're recommending a revote in Bennington County and how process-wise it would play into this?
Yeah. So as we said at the beginning of the presentation today, the results for local elections are certified by that district clerk. In the case of an election that is contested and a recount is asked for, then court would decide what the procedure is going forward. What we noticed about the error that was made back in 2022 in the Bennington 1 House District is that the number of voters who were mistakenly put in the wrong district was greater than the vote differential between the two candidates. And so that's why our office is recommending a revote of the Bennington 1 House race only. There were no other elections on either of those ballots that would have been close enough that those voters being placed in the wrong district could have made a difference. And so we expect that challenge will be brought today, and we will be recommending to the court that they order a revote in that race. That revote would be a universal vote by mail conducted election, because general elections in Vermont are conducted universal vote by mail, and as such it would need to have ample time to create the ballots, mail the ballots, and have the ballots returned. And so we don't know at this time exactly when the due date or the end date of that election would be. But when we get some directive from the court, we will be able to put a little more clarity on that. Any other questions?
I mean, I guess I just have one more, sorry. This maybe is just for anybody at the table, Madam Secretary, or any of the party chairs too. You know, how did this election go? I mean, just in terms of, you know, we broke records by about 1,000 in terms of voter turnout. We've now had mail-out ballots for a few years. I guess just what is your assessment of, you know, number one, the fact that we had such a high turnout election this year, but number two, just how is the system working more generally? How are your parties processing it? I mean, on election day, there was already like 180,000 people that voted.
230,000.
Right. Just maybe your thoughts on that. You know.
I mean, I will speak on behalf of the Democrats here. I'm really grateful for the way that elections are run in Vermont. You know, the Secretary prioritizes transparency, prioritizes efficiency. We trust the Secretary and the clerks that we're going to get a free and open election, and that we're going to get accurate results reported in a timely fashion, and we've seen that. On top of that, the Secretary has implemented some changes. We have the voter guide, which is really great. It's really helpful for having an informed voting public. And there are some additional changes to the infrastructure around the way that elections are conducted that are going to make it easier and more transparent for Vermonters to understand exactly what's going on in the process. So I think overall, very happy with the way that this election was conducted.
So yeah, I would add to that. I agree with everything Director Daniel said. I think the current system with universal mail-in voting, really great. That should continue to happen. You know, I think for the Progressive Party, you know, two of the big major reforms that I think this election highlighted more than ever is the need for ranked choice voting, which, you know, we've been advocating for since our party's existence. Saw some traction in the legislature last session. We shouldn't, especially for statewide and also local state rep races, we shouldn't be punting decisions to the legislature when you don't have a majority support for any candidate. We should just process. And then also, you know, this election has made more clear than ever the need for public financing of elections, and we do have something on the books in Vermont, but it hasn't been used in a long, long time because it's not an effective system that people want to use. And we saw a massive amount of money being thrown into our Vermont election system by very, very wealthy people in both the primary and the general election. This has been heavily reported upon. And the only shot regular people really have running for office and having their voice heard is through a public financing system where you can kind of level the playing field a little bit.
So my name is Deb Bilodeau. I'm the former state chair of the Republican Party. I'm here on behalf of Paul Dane, our current state chair. I would just like to add that this was a great election. Thank you for all of your work. I did work the polls that day, and it was phenomenal. It was smooth, well organized. Kudos to Susan Hill, our town chair, or our city clerk in Essex Junction, so I was really proud of that. We're also extremely thrilled about the outcome of this election. It was historical. I think it brings the state of Vermont closer to a balance under the Golden Dome, if you will. And we couldn't be more thrilled. And we look forward to 2026. Thank you.
So I talked a little bit before about the great work of our civic and voter engagement team at the Secretary of State's office, who were out tabling at festivals and farmers markets and concerts and ball games all summer and fall, engaging with voters, making sure that they understood how to get registered to vote, how to update their voter registration information, but most importantly, how to access their voter guide. And the number of people who just went out of their way to say thank you for the access to information that voter guide provided was really heartening. I think that it's really easy, even in a teeny tiny state like Vermont, it's really easy for ordinary people to feel disconnected from the people who represent them, and to feel like they don't know how to make their voice heard, don't know how to contact that candidate and ask them a question. And providing a voter guide that connects voters with the candidates, including their website, their social media handle, and their contact information, is really critical to voters feeling empowered and feeling able to make an informed decision of who they're going to vote for on election day. So I'm really thankful to our engagement team for the great work on that. Additionally, I want to point out that we did make a significant change in terms of transparency with respect to campaign finance this year. Many times over the decades that I have been involved in the political process in Vermont, I've heard people say it's just too hard to figure out who is a candidate and who has filed and whether they've been filing on time and what they filed and how to get that information. And I want to thank Director Sheehan for doing a lot of the legwork to make sure that we could compile a list after each campaign finance filing of candidates who have not filed versus candidates who have filed. We know that Vermont's campaign finance law has some limitations in terms of ensuring transparency. We will be making recommendations to the legislature that will help us improve transparency in future elections. But it was really important to me here in 2024, in the first election that I oversaw, to make sure that we were doing everything that we could to facilitate that transparency and that understanding so that Vermonters can see who are funding the elections that are being run in Vermont. So we look forward to working with the legislature in the coming session to create even better transparency, but really thankful to the team for doing the legwork to make sure we could provide everything that we could this year.
Josh, can I follow up on what you said? Did you say that you think that the Lieutenant Governor is that would have won that in for right?
I think so. I mean, 13,000 people voted for the Socialist Party candidate. I can't imagine that most of those folks would be voting for the Republican as their number two, right? It's Green Mountain Peace and Justice Party. So, when you see a result like that, it only would have taken about half of those votes moving forward. I mean, we have no way of knowing, but, that's why it's really important that we actually move ranked choice voting forward, because I think Vermont deserves to kind of know where the true majority opinion lies with the voters after the election.
Do you think the legislature should certify the election for Zuckerman then?
No. Yeah. I think that's not the system that we have. I think the system we should have is ranked choice voting with majority votes.
Do you think that the correct thing would be for them to cast their votes for this process? Thank you.
Any final questions? Wonderful. Thank you all for coming today. Deb?